Hey, what's up, everybody? It's MJ, and welcome to the Black Wine Guy Experience. My guest today is Robert Bohr. Robert has an extensive history in the food and wine business. He has like a whole highlight reel, but I'll just give you a few of them. First of all, my boy Robert, and he's my boy because he's from Jersey, just like me. He moved to New York City in 1994 to attend NYU, where he received his degree in political science. He was on the path to law school, but during college, he worked at Gramercy Tavern, where he fell in love with wine and the complexity and history of this beautiful industry we all love, and continued to work at top restaurants in New York City. We're talking Michelin-starred restaurants like Babu, Nick and Tony, and Daniel. In 2004, he became the managing partner and wine director for Cru Restaurant, where he personally curated the cellar, which was composed of 120,000 of the finest and rarest wines in the world. In 2009, he started Grand Cru Selections with Roy Welland, Ned Benedict, and Elise Pfeffenstiel. Hope I got that right. In 2013, he opened Charlie Bird with Chef Ryan Hardy, which is a hip neighborhood restaurant located in Soho, which has Italian accented new American fare, wine, and art. And I saw a picture in his boom boxes. I want to get into that. Yeah. Since then, he has also opened restaurants with Pasquale Jones in 2016 and Legacy Records in 2018. And Robert currently lives in New York City with his wife, Jordan, who was actually our guest on episode 6, and their sons, Henry and Ronan. Welcome, Robert. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
That's it. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So Robert and I connected through his wife, Jordan, actually. She said, Robert doesn't do a lot of stuff like this, but I think you guys would get along, and, and I'll tell him about you. And so thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Matter of fact, I know I've only seen you on one other podcast, and that's like the Mac Daddy. That's I'll drink to that.
It took like 300 episodes.
Yeah, I actually listened to it. You were episode 300. Yeah, and so I really appreciate you coming here. Tell us what we're going to be drinking tonight.
So, I figured you have access to all sorts of crazy stuff, and I thought I'd give you something that I'm sure that you never had because it was only made once and it was never commercialized. It was just a wine that was made for friends by a good friend of both Jordan's and mine. The Sess family, Diana and Jeremy Sess, bought a bunch of vineyards in 2005, and I happened to be really close friends with them at that point, and got to work on a vineyard deal with them, which was really an amazing opportunity and privilege. But from that large parcel that they bought was a vineyard in Nuit Saint-Georges, the Autoré vineyard. They've only made it in this one vintage in 2005, and then they sold that vineyard. Their partners in the deal, the de Monty family, kept some of it, and then it eventually went to Boisset, and now it's a part of the Vougeray domain holdings. So it's a kind of a cool thing that you've never probably seen, and if you work harvest or you do something nice, they'll give you a couple bottles of wine, and that's where this came from. And that's the outstanding, really one of the great vintages of the modern era, 2005. It's a Premier Cru Vineyard, Autoré, and it's tasty.
It is tasty. The color on it's amazing. It's 2005. It's beautiful funk right now. Starting to open up, nice spice, and this is really special. So thank you, man. Oh, this is awesome. So, man, you're from Jersey. Where'd you grow up in Jersey? I'm from Jersey. You're from Jersey.
Yeah. I say Parsippany because most people don't know what Lake Hiawatha is, which is like this small little blue-collar enclave within Parsippany, which now has kind of gotten to a place where a lot of corporations move to, and they've used as their kind of corporate campuses, and so Parsippany's become a little bit more well-known. It's funny because I was talking to Heather, who I work with, and she's like, talking about New Jersey. We're talking about from New Jersey. And she's like, what exit? I said, 48. Because that's that stupid question that everyone asks you when you're from New Jersey. But then I'm like, I don't even know, because are you talking about Route 80, Route 46, Route 10, 287, the Parkway, the Turnpike? Which highway are you talking about? Because they're all different exits, and then
exit 11 for the Turnpike.
Yeah, exactly right.
And then exit 105 is where I grew up, but now I'm exit 109 off the Parkway.
So people, they try to flex on New Jersey, but they don't know.
They don't know, man. So you're from a blue collar town in Jersey. I'm from a little. It was a sleepy little beach town. Growing up, Long Branch. It was all the people would come down from New York. We had the Haunted Mansion. We had the water slide and all that stuff. So how does a kid from a sleepy little blue collar town end up with all that shit I just read you've done?
Listen, every day I can't answer that. Every day I think to myself, how did that happen? My parents still don't understand it. You know, my dad was a telephone pole climber and electrician, and we always used to talk about the types of work that you do, and you kind of can divide it into the people who shower before work and people who shower when they get home from work. And there wasn't a lot of like respect in my extended family for the people who showered before work. So when I would come home from college for holidays and talk about working in restaurants or something, you know, my uncles would like check my hands and they'd be like, "You got soft hands. You're not working." You know, there was a little bit of that. And so it's hard to say, but I was fortunate that I grew up in a family that really valued hard work and commitment. And so I started working really at a really young age, and the place where I could make the most money was in a small Italian restaurant in New Jersey called Villa Molise. I started there just before the spring of 1988, so I was just about 14, and I started.
Did you have your working papers? Remember working
no
papers?
No working papers. Exactly. You could only work at 15, but it was all cash under the table, and it was
nice.
It was a different era, and that's when we start talking about like wage labor disputes and all that. It wasn't any of that shit. You got paid as much as the waiter and waitresses or bartenders wanted to pay you at the end of the day based on how much you helped them.
Yeah.
And that was it. There was no like minimum wage, there was no hourly pay. You showed up, you worked really hard, and you hoped they gave you your due.
Yeah.
And I did that for 4 years, and I learned a ton. I missed out on a lot of opportunities when I was a kid, like a lot of fun stuff, because I was working Fridays and Saturdays and holidays and all that stuff. But I learned that the harder you work, the more money you can make.
Yeah, and you know, I just was reading. I'm listening to some book now. It's 12 Principles, Jordan Peterson. There's some controversial stuff in there, but there's just some really good, hard-nosed advice. And he said, you know, the longer you can delay gratification, you will end up with satisfaction. I was like, well, I wish I took that to heart. And something you said, like Gary Vee is notorious, like. When I was working in New York, and then I worked over in Hoboken, our Skurnik rep was putting together these tastings, and he would invite Gary, and Gary never came. I mean, that dude, he's like,
he's on the hustle.
Yeah,
he didn't have time for that shit.
The grind, man. Hustle, you know, and you know, so you talk about like missing out on stuff, but like, I can appreciate. You know, my father worked at the post office. My grandfather was a mason, you know, and like everybody was like work with their hands.
Yeah.
And you know, but you know. My dad was funny. He was like, one day, one time he's dropping me off the airport, and he's like, one day if you're successful, you'll be getting on planes all the time. So he didn't want me to have to do what he did, but I admire that hard work and goes a long way. So it's a very Jersey thing to work hard and, you know, come from a family that values that.
Yeah, you can't take that away from someone. You know, you can be less dialed in or fortunate or have less access, but if you know at the end of the day that you like laid it all out there, you worked hard, you earned that paycheck.
Yeah.
There's nothing more rewarding than that, even at a young age where, you know, there were long hours. I mean, I worked a lot. Even when I was 14, I worked a lot of hours, and then I did that all through college, and over that time, there was no roadmap. There's no pamphlet of how do you go from dishwasher to sommelier. It was just you were around people and you're in the dining room and you're feeling and you're getting a sense of what people are gonna need over time because you see it. And that notion of hospitality, of trying to anticipate someone's needs, it takes a really long time to anticipate. And you start to learn body language and cues, and as you're talking to someone, whether you're losing them or they're actually like totally following what you're saying, and those skills that you develop in those early years, even as a busboy or a barback or whatever it may be, you know how to walk in a dining room, you know how to see people, you know how to defer to the guest, how to get out of their way, all these things that then when you go work at a place like Gramercy Tavern that's really hyper focused on hospitality in a way that it really is putting yourself second, right? You're thinking about your team first, and then your coworkers, and you're already there in a way. You have enough built in already. And you've gotten to that place that it allows you to focus on something like wine or learning about, you know, when I started as a front waiter, then I got promoted to a captain after really shaking down the manager and be like, I need to make more money because I need to make payments to NYU every semester in order so I can, you know, to go to class.
So yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So like you're working all this time.
Yeah.
How'd you get in NYU? I mean, obviously you're a bright guy, but like, how did you manage that? Like in high school, working.
Oh no! In high school, I was almost expelled. I almost failed out my last. Like I literally until the day of graduation, I was on the border of being expelled. I was a terrible student. I just didn't care. But then I went away for a year in Colorado, and I really went to ski and kind of like try to figure things out, get away from where I was from. And I was around a bunch of people who were even less motivated than me, and I couldn't believe that there were people who just didn't care whether like they did anything productive that day. And so then I retook the SATs. I did really well in those 2 semesters when I was in Colorado, and I transferred to NYU. And by the time I got to NYU, one of my parents were like, I was a bad kid. I got in a lot of trouble, and I had bad grades. And my parents were like, there's no way that we're going to condone you going to NYU and living on your own in New York City, right? This is also like early 90s. Like, think about how fucked up New York was in the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, and even early 90s, because then like it was stop and frisk.
Giuliani sweeps.
Yeah, man.
The sweeps.
It was crazy.
And I didn't have to worry about that shit because,
Right.
you know, like I'm white,
Right.
and you know, I don't, you know, the cops don't frisk, you know,
No.
college white kids,
No.
you know. So, and I wasn't buying
They're
drugs,
like,
and so
you're like 6 feet over 6 feet tall. It's like,
Yeah.
is he a Calvin Klein model?
yeah,
Like,
they're not messing with me.
are
And
you
I-
okay, son?
And they're like, and it was cool. But my parents were like, first of all, we don't want you to go. We
Right.
think it's a bad idea. You're just gonna get really in bad trouble, not just like local Jersey trouble, but fucking bad trouble. And Rikers is a bad place. You don't want to go there. And third, like, frankly, we just can't afford it. We don't have,
Right.
you know, even then when NYU was only $20,000 a semester, which, by the way, is only that's fucking insane, right?
Yeah.
It took me 17 years to pay off undergrad debt. Anyway,
We talked
about that.
I just
Yeah.
paid mine off last year.
And it's just
had to
nuts.
sell my house to do it, but you know,
It's right, and so
it's crazy.
So my parents were like, no, there's just no way. And so by the time I got to NYU and I was working 2 jobs and I was commuting, there was no way I wasn't gonna like squeeze every ounce of that education. So I looked up my professors. I made sure that they had like good credentials. I talked to a bunch of people. I befriended the dean of our school, who then connected me with John Sexton, who was the dean of law school at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And John and I connected. We really hit it off, and he became really my mentor, my protector throughout undergrad, and allowed me to audit his law school classes at NYU. And he, thanks to John, I have to say, I really I owe my current career to him, but I also owe this singular focus on improvement through education, because that's what he was all about when he was a kid. And you know, probably the smartest person I ever met. But by the time I got through the undergrad program, and I'm kind of cutting through the chase a little bit, I worked all that time and all that stuff. I learned a lot about wine at Gramercy Tavern. But when I graduated NYU, I took a year off to study for the LSAT. I was working still at Gramercy, and John got me. I took the LSAT. I did well. John wrote my letters of recommendation, got me to a whole bunch of law schools. I credit John with all that, right? But because I had so much undergrad debt, I couldn't countenance the idea of another 6-figure education bill. Because NYU has this amazing public service law program that if you go into public service, they'll pay you a stipend and give you debt and forgiveness. You don't. It's amazing. It's Ruth Tilden Snow Scholarship. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
But I didn't get it. And so I went to John. I said, John, I didn't get the Root Scholarship. I don't know what to do. And he was the one who told me, he's like, I've seen how much you love working in the restaurant business. I see you I was at Babo at the time. He lives in the building next to it. John doesn't drink, which is the craziest thing. But anyway, and he's like, I see, and he's like, the most important thing is passion. If you love what you do, you know, it won't be a job. And he said, once you no longer love what you're doing, then come back to the law school. And as far as I'm concerned, if I'm still connected with NYU in any capacity, you'll always have a place at the law school. So I kind of felt like I had like a free shot.
Yeah, that's like a huge safety net. And to me, it sounds like when I hear that story, it's like, you know, your family everybody's family, we have limitations, you know, unless you're brought up a certain way. And but like it was cool. Like it sounds like he gave you permission to pursue this. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like here's someone you trusted who was successful, highly intelligent.
The dean of NYU law. He
I
clerked
know.
for Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. The guy had all the bona fides that one would look for in the law profession, and he said, "Don't do it."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I went because I was hanging around a bunch of kids who went to schools like Wesleyan and Trinity, and I was like, well, I'm at least as smart as they are, and they're going to school. I
Right.
had no freaking, you know, I took the LSATs, took a course over the summer, got good enough, and, you know, got into Rutgers and a couple other schools, and it was the most economical. But like, you know, like, and obviously I wouldn't be here today, but for going there. But like, it's just really when I hear that story, like to have someone of that stature give you permission to follow your passion, and you know, and coming from Jersey, working class family. I mean, to this day, my cousin's like, oh, why don't you take? You can always take the bar. I'm like, yeah, I took that shit like 4 times.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be, you know. So it's just really cool. I think it's really cool to have find that mentorship, and I love how much you credit him. Like I can hear the love in your heart for this man. It's really it's you know, like helped steer you to your badassery.
so much love for that guy that when you flash forward 10 years later, I proposed to Jordan. Jordan had just met John, and we were John's. You know, had a we aside. He had a bad situation go down, and Jordan said on the way out of seeing John, she's like, "Do you think John would marry us?" So, which by the way was like, I'm like, now I know I made the right call. Like that the woman I proposed to recognized how important this guy is in my life to make that call. So John Sexton ended up officiating our wedding.
Oh man,
like that's how much he's in our life.
Yeah.
He's like
that's
best.
incredible. That is the best.
The best.
I mean, that's just so. Speaking of which, so Jordan, your wife, like she was on. She told us a little about like how did you two meet? Like how did that happen? She told us some funny stuff.
She probably has a different version than me.
Yeah, totally. That's why I'm asking. I'm going to the other story.
Yeah.
You know, no matter how thin you slice it, there's always 2 sides.
Like
so.
Tom has a different version than Jerry about the chase. You know what I mean?
Wile E. Coyote
Right.
Genius has a different story from the Roadrunner.
Exactly. So,
you know, and they coexist in the same space.
Honestly, I don't even know what I was thinking when I met her in 2003. Like, what was going through my mind that I thought I could punch that weight, but I just was like, fuck it, I'm just going to go for it. So she was working at WD-50, and I am still, but at the time I was really close with Wiley. I worked with him at 71 Clinton. And I was going, it was like just a couple days before they were opening, and I was going in there to talk some shit with Wiley or something. And Jordan she was like taking reservations, and she was reading a book that I had just read, and it was like a really easy like conversation to start up. And she was like super engaged. She wasn't snotty. She wasn't standoffish. She was like, genuinely engaged in having a conversation about this book. And I was like, wow, you haven't lived in New York very long, have you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're way too fucking nice for how beautiful and smart and engaged you are. There's like no chance that you're from New York. And so she wasn't, of course. She was from Colorado. And but to her credit, she definitely didn't take the first, I don't know, let's be charitable and say 10 offers to go out, right? I don't know how many it was. And I'm, by the way, I don't know what it was. Honestly, to this day, I don't understand what got me to go there again and again. But I just was like, I'm going to figure this out. And then she became friends with Wiley's girlfriend, Liz, who was like really my best friend at the time. And I asked Liz to bring Jordan into this restaurant where I was working. Because I know you have like home field advantage. If you're like the sommelier in a fancy restaurant,
right.
you got some magic.
Yeah.
And so she came into Washington Park where I was working. We did some dinners. And then I invited her after that dinner to the James Beard Awards, which, come on, it's a pretty good ticket if someone's interested in food and wine. She wanted to be a food writer. The restaurant I was working with, the chef was nominated for something. You show up in a tuxedo, like the fucking roundest, shortest, baldest motherfucker looks good in a tuxedo, right? So like I'm thinking like I got some game coming into this situation. And that was in April or May, it was May, I guess, of 2003. And then we had a good time. We went out to dinner afterwards with some friends, a bunch of like fancy, food and wine people. Yeah. And then she moved to Colorado. So I was like, fuck. like all this good, juju I had going in from this situation, this halo effect, like just waned.
He was like, I'm straight macking this.
And then
She's like, bye.
I'm like, huh? Well, we kept
I took you to fucking James Beard. It was at the
but in the end,
VIP.
we kept in touch, and it was over. Then 2 years later, she moved back to New York, went to cooking school, and we kind of reconnected when she moved back.
She did tell a funny story about, like, she said you guys kept in touch in Colorado and you became friends, and you're like, and you would tell her about people you were dating. You're like, but if you come back, I'll leave her for you.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, that's Jersey. That's a Jersey line, of course.
Keep your fucking options open.
So I thought that was great.
Yeah.
And so then she moves back. She's going to cooking school.
She does a stage at Danielle, and I worked at Danielle, and Danielle and I were pretty friendly, and word gets back to me. She did really well, and they're gonna offer her a job, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna take this job, and so I'm gonna stay in New York, but when you're a stage at a 4-star French restaurant, you don't get a minute off. Like you're only scheduled for 12 hours, but you work like 18 hours, 6 days a week. You're the lowest of low, right? Yeah. And then she got a real job in the kitchen, and so she was a cook in the kitchen, but it's still like, oh, you only have to work 17 hours then because you're not a stagiaire, but you're still just the low cook, right? So I didn't see her all that much, and also I had just opened Cru, and that was like full contact, like an amazing experience. Got to work with really great people, great sommeliers, some really incredible talent went through that restaurant, and but we would connect on Sundays here or there, and I was fully trying to impress her, for sure.
Nice.
For sure. She tells a story that she like comes by for a glass of wine. I open a bottle of like 1980 Henri Jaillet, which is totally true. Like, a bottle of wine that could pay our mortgage for a couple months right now. But like, who cares? At that point, you're like, I'm fucking going for the kill. And I'm not sure that made a difference, but like, cumulatively, you keep throwing it out there.
So it's like the water torture.
Yeah,
just wear it down, man. Just wear it down.
So
like,
that's okay. I'll go out with you. And so then
stop opening all this great wine. No, don't stop. But
yeah, and then 2 years later we got engaged, and then 18 months after that we got married, and we waited a little while, and we had Henry. Gosh, 8 years later. Shit. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good
So,
time.
you know what? I want to talk about Cru, but before we do that, I do need to take a quick break. So we're going to take a quick break right now.
Good, because my glass is empty.
Yeah, and hang on, everybody. I'll be right back with a little bit more with Robert. All right, we're back, and so I did a little bit of research. Tell me about Cru, like that 120,000 bottles of wine on the wall deal. I mean,
Cru is amazing. I have to say, it was definitely it was a moment in time that won't get replicated. Sadly, it was at this real crossroads of a time when not just New Yorkers but Americans were getting really into wine, and not just into like 100-point Parker Cabernets and stuff. So people started to be really interested in Burgundy and some cool stuff from the Rhone Valley and Piedmont and all the things that I was really interested in. But it was still affordable, quote unquote affordable, to buy Burgundy, right? I mean,
no, I know what you mean, because I was starting the business in '97.
Yeah, and you could buy. It's nuts.
I mean, you could buy crazy Bourgognes for like $15, man. That were like next to Polini Montrachet or next to these great wines.
We poured, it sounds stupid, like Rouleau Bourgogne Blanc by the glass, which sounds like we also poured like Ramonet Batard Montrachet, but that's a different thing. But I mean, legitimately, Roumier Bourgogne Rouge, you could just 25 case drops. Now you don't even get 6 bottles. I mean, it's just it was a different world. And because the auction market was still more Bordeaux focused, you could buy Giacosa red labels for like $200 a bottle. You could buy, this is going to sound really extravagant, but we bought a lot of 71 Latache for $1,000 a bottle, which sounds like a lot, but now that's like $8,000 a bottle, $10,000 a bottle, right? It's just a different world.
Right.
And so, and because Roy, the owner, who really, like, I don't know why or how, but he trusted me to just do this and buy a bunch of wine, and we put together a really deep cellar. He was an options trader, and he's a really, really smart guy, incredibly.
There's a theme. You hang out with a lot of really, really smart guys.
It's fucking bananas. But he was, before there was software that could figure out the algorithms for options, he could do it in his head. He was just like a really gifted mathematician. And so he was just making boatloads of cash. So for him, like every $100,000 invoice from an auction house was like a rounding error. It just didn't matter. It was just fun. And he was really into it. And he was really interested in like learning about wine and being with the right winemakers and we spent a lot of time in France and in Italy, and we had a great time together. We traveled all over, and he just really trusted me to do all this fun stuff. And he was always.
Why do you think that is, though? I think. Do you think it has to do with like just because he saw you're a hard worker, your grittiness, you know. And you talk about hospitality. Like when you talk about hospitality, you talk about putting people before you.
I think what it is was, you know, he was opening this restaurant called Washington Park with Jonathan Waxman, and Jonathan and I had already worked together, and I had done a wine program with him, and I worked at this restaurant in the Hamptons called Nick and Tony's, and at the time in the late 90s, it was really like the spot, right? And I was young. I was a sommelier. I was like 24 years old, working at Babbo, and then I worked at Nick and Tony's the next summer, and so I was young, where I got to meet all of these people, and I had a lot of energy, and I was enthusiastic, and I was genuinely curious about not just wine, but I was curious if people liked it. I wanted to show that what I liked, they should like too.
Isn't that the best when people?
Oh my God, the immediate gratification. It's the worst drug in the world, right? Because that immediate gratification feedback loop, you crave, and you keep wanting to do it,
right? And
I never asked Roy this question, but I don't know why, but he did, and he was incredibly generous with me and all of our friends. And anytime a winemaker came in, we could open whatever we wanted, and it was really great. And so we created a really impressive wine program, and it wasn't just me. I had great people I worked with. John Slover, who's now the corporate wine director for the major food group at like the Grill and Carbone, worked with us when we opened. Michel Couvreux, who was the wine director at Le Bernardin for 10 years, came to work with us. Raj Vaidya, who became the chef sommelier at Restaurant Daniel, worked with us. Josh Nadell, who works now for all the Lafayette, Dutch, Andrew Carmelini restaurants. We all kind of worked together. It was an amazing crew.
You are seriously like a team of wine you've worked with, man.
It was a crazy time, and the reason why it was so. Roy didn't really care about making money off of the wine. He cared a little bit. We wanted to cover costs, but he wasn't like trying to gouge people. So like $1,000 bottle cost, we could sell for $1,400 or $1,500 instead of $3,000
or
$5,000.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and so as a result, people would come in and just order an amazing amount of wine.
So you really did to foster the whole really food and wine experience
and
when you
taste
do that.
Everything.
Yeah.
And taste. I taste everything, and it was a great education. You know, I wasn't even 30.
Yeah. So when you talk about, because I had a similar experience. I worked at Acker. That was my first. I only worked there for a year, but literally, it was like, you're going to drink the finest wines in the world on a nightly basis. So I'd work in the store for 12 hours, and I'd go upstairs and pour for the wine workshop, and I would have 29 Latour, 59 Latour, 61 Latour. And I'm best bottle of wine I had at that point was like Fetzer Gewürztraminer, you know what I mean? And I would taste Latache verticals, and back then John was really into the cult wine, so we'd have Screaming Eagle and Harlan and everything, and like that was like I went to a private taste someone's house. We had a Reyes, and we had the first vintage of Cinquenan and so I see today there's like, first of all, so many of these wines, these wines are so scarce.
Yeah.
And the price is so much. Like a lot of these young somms you see who are really into their certificates and everything, but they haven't had the opportunity or will never have the opportunity to taste some of the wines you've tasted.
We lament this fact all the time. Like, there's a bunch of people, kind of my generation was like maybe the last, the people who came before us, the Daniel Jonas era guys, and I say guys, unfortunately, because I only knew 2 women sommeliers in New York City when I was kind of coming up, and they were amazing, but there weren't that many, right? In fact, there weren't that many sommeliers when I started working in the restaurant business.
Well, that's the thing. In the 90s, like late 90s,
you couldn't name 10.
Yeah,
you couldn't name 10.
Nope.
And they're all French, and they're all, you
Yeah.
know, and they're all worked in Midtown,
Yep.
that French mafia.
Yep.
Then you exclude like Boulet. That was the only carve out
Right.
to that, right? I guess Chanterelle too, but yeah. But in general, the sommelier thing is relatively recent, and it's kind of gone, you know, has its ebbs and flows, and right now it's obviously in a really tough spot.
Yeah, it's in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah.
You know, so you build up crew, you do that, and then like what'd you do then? What'd you do next?
Yeah, then you know the world economy cratered, and people couldn't spend thousands of dollars on their corporate cards, and you know it was also even if they could afford it, it was kind of garish to be out there, you know, let them eat cake.
That's
You
what
know
I was
what I
trying to
mean?
say. Let them eat cake.
Yeah, so it wasn't. You know, there were people like, hey, listen, I want to order this bottle of wine, but you can't put the bottle on the table. You gotta
Right.
like
Yeah,
decant it in the kitchen and bring that decanter out, and I'm like, okay. What do I care?
Yeah.
But it was out of fashion at that point. So, you know, a restaurant that had like a $300 per person check average went to under 100. And that fucks your shit up, right? In a really big way. And so, and I also, you know, it was just also a lot was changing at that point. There was, you know, I left Cru to work with Tom Colicchio to kind of oversee all of his restaurants and do kind of
Tom Colicchio, the guy who's on TV all the time.
Yeah, Top Chef, a good guy. Also Jersey.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
See?
I'm just throwing it out there.
Just saying.
So another great
Dude, I mean,
Jersey guy.
this is like I'm trying to think of a sports analogy of someone, but you don't get to play with so many great like you.
It's like dream team.
Yeah, like
It's a dream team.
exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like
You've gone through
92
the
dream team.
of hospitality and wine.
And Tom's great, and he's super motivated about politics right now. I love talking to him about. I mean, he's like really dialed in, and he's a sharp guy. And I worked there for a little over a year, but at that time, Ryan Hardy, who, as I said, Jordan and I got married in Aspen. We used to go to the Aspen Food and Wine Festival all the time. We kind of lived.
So
at the
for a
Little
guy
Nell.
who grew up in Lake Hiawatha,
Yeah.
your life is not sucking.
No, it's
by
it's embarrassing. It's I can't even. I don't even. Why I don't do a lot of this is it's hard to talk about this because it's kind of embarrassing. I don't tell my folks about like shit like that. It's just kind of ridiculous. So Ryan was the chef of the Little Nell, and we would do all
that
these
Bobby.
things.
That was one of Bobby's or.
Little Nell's a hotel in Aspen that's
Okay.
like really the place, right?
Right.
And it was ground zero for all the events of Food and Wine, and Richard Betts was the wine director there at the time, and we had just a fucking blast.
Why? You know, Dustin was on.
He was.
Why were so many fucking Psalms in Aspen in Colorado back then, man? Like,
Well, because
I
first
need
of all,
to go,
quality of life
though.
is pretty good.
Yeah, that
right.
must be.
It's pretty good. You know, it's nice in the winter. And it's nice in the summer. You get 2 months off because the hotel is closed, and there's this master sommelier, Jay Fletcher, who kind of groomed a lot of master sommeliers in Colorado. And if you lived in Aspen, you could really get a lot of one-on-one time with Jay, and he's a lot of fucking fun. But you could, it's like you had a mentor like program to try to pass that test. And so Dustin, for sure, went through the Jay Fletcher program.
Yeah.
You know, Bobby Stuckey, all these guys, you know, all these really great people. Spent a lot of time with Fletcher.
Another guy who's politically dialed in. And
Bobby's one of the greatest human beings alive. Like, I mean, one of the most soulful, decent. The guy bleeds hospitality. He doesn't put himself second. He puts himself. He's like the last guy. Right. He's just such an amazing human being. I couldn't say enough things about him. So anyway, so Ryan and I became really close friends at the Nell. He really hooked it up for us at our wedding in 2008 when we got married in Aspen, and then as a gift to Ryan,
did your family come out to the wedding?
Oh yeah, dude,
were their minds just blown?
I can't even talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like guys bringing like magnums of 62 Roumier Bon Mar for my bachelor party and shit like that. And my parents I'm like, no, it's just kind of, you just gotta let it go. It's how these guys roll. It's cool. You know, whatever. But Bobby Stuckey and Frosca did the food at our wedding, right? Okay. Like it's like that, right? And so Ryan, the next year, as a thank you, we took him to Alinea in Chicago, and while we're there, he's saying, you know, I really think I'm gonna leave Aspen because it's gonna get a little small. I'm either gonna move to San Francisco or New York to open up a restaurant. And I was like, all right, cool. You know, we kept in touch, and when he started dating this woman from New York, so it looked like New York was more likely. And I was like, why don't we talk about this? And so we started looking at spaces, and I was still working for Tom, but I hadn't been an employee in a while. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's hard to go back from, And I love working with Tom, and he was great. But when you're in a restaurant with a celebrity chef, like the wine isn't even second fiddle. It's like I'm like, would you care for this or this? I'm like, we don't really care about wine. Is Tom here? And I'd be like, right. I'm gonna go fuck myself right now. All right, like, I'll make sure your water glass is extra full, but I'm gonna like get the fuck out of here. So at some point, I had to figure out how do I get back into owning restaurants. I was doing a lot of private wine consulting at the time, and that was kind of paying the bills, and that was keeping my wine cup full, but it was not that gratifying.
Right. What did you do? Were you like a wine buyer, broker for people?
So like early on, like even before Cru, I started doing some private wine consulting for an amazing guy who's really fundamentally changed my life. Of that John Sexton level, changed my life. And so he has put me in touch with a bunch of really great people. And so I had a business. We started called Grand Cru Wine Consulting, and we ended up growing it to a bunch of maybe too many clients, and then I kind of spun that off, and I still do wine consulting. And Grant, who's the wine director, partner of mine at the restaurants, and Arvid Rosengren, who we were working together in 2016, won Best Sommelier in the world. He's from Sweden. So the three of us have this wine consulting company called King Street Sommeliers, and we still manage like 8 wine cellars around, mostly New York based, but everyone has like a house in Aspen or Miami or wherever, someplace fancy. So we do a bunch of that stuff. And that's when you get to drink really fancy shit.
Right.
Like really extra fancy.
Right.
Even for a guy who's like kind of jaded, sometimes it's hard to get out of bed to drink like the same shit you've had 50 times. But then every once in a while, you're like, I've never had that bottle of wine. Yeah. I'll make the trek and I'll work that event.
That's a fucking problem to have.
It's a problem to have.
Like, I don't want any more Chave Hermitage. Yeah. You know how many times I've had Chave Hermitage? But I haven't had that vintage.
Exactly.
No, that's really cool.
But and it also gives you the opportunity when you are in those positions to bring on one or two friends of yours who haven't had those opportunities.
Right.
And so it's actually a really good thing, and that's one of the best things about wine is the people who are opening bottles in general want to share them.
Yeah, particularly at that level. I mean, they want to open them. They want to share them with people who really appreciate them, and people who can actually educate them about them.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're that guy.
So so that's one of the best things about the consulting thing, and we get to bring in some sommeliers, friends of ours, like Cedric, who's the wine director of 11 Madison Park. I'm like, hey Cedric, we're gonna do this like ridiculous dinner, blah blah blah. I'm like, are you free? He's like, I can get free.
Right.
And so he'll come and join, or whoever it is, and we just have a bunch of friends who will just like kind of like tag along and open up some wines, and makes our job easier, and we all just get blasted.
Nice. So you and Ryan, you're staying in touch. He was dating a woman in New York, but then you start looking at spaces.
And it was hard for. This was like 2012. We had like a couple spaces like we were like locked in, and then they're like, no. The landlords were like, no, you guys don't have enough credit worthiness. I mean, it was really nuts, right? We finally ended up finding this space on the corner of King Street and 6th Avenue that became Charlie Bird. And because of this private consulting business, I met a lot of kind of high net worth individuals and a bunch of people that I know pretty well. And every time they'd say, hey, if you're going to do something in the wine, you're going to do something, open something, let me know. And Ryan, we had a lot of overlap because he was in Aspen. A lot of my clients have houses in Aspen. And so we just cobbled together.
Yeah, rich people hang out in the same places.
Yeah, for sure.
Really do. They have a house in Montecito.
And there's like the rich guy kit, and a part of the rich guy kit is you got to have a plane.
Yep.
You got to have a vacation house. You got to have a wine cellar.
Yep.
And you got to have an art collection.
Right.
And so I'm a part of that kit, rich guy kit. And so we say, we're going to do this restaurant, and we end up being like 9 of our friends who are financial partners, and we opened Charlie Bird, and it was just, and the things I wanted to, it was kind of a reaction to the kind of staid, formal, buttoned up nature of Cru. I wanted to do the opposite.
Right. So, boom boxes.
Yeah. So Ryan and I both love hip hop. Love hip hop. Like
Pac or Biggie.
Oh, come on, stop.
I know. Come on. I know it's a bad one.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Pac's fucking
I
next
know,
level,
but
shit. But
if you're from the East Coast, it just is, right?
That's it. Especially 90s. You're like a college kid in the 90s. I lived in Brooklyn when Ready to Drive dropped.
Yeah, exactly, man. I mean, we got to digress. That was a crazy era. I mean, DMX. I remember listening to like DMX mixtapes. Bought out the trunk in Brooklyn because my roommate from law school was in Brooklyn. We come home. He lived in Fort Greene when it was really Fort Greene. He lived in projects and literally I mean, Helter Skelter, Black Moon. I mean, just on and on. Nasty Nas. I mean, just
when Illmatic came out, I was like, nuts.
I mean, I don't know what this shit they listen to nowadays, but that was the golden mid '90s New York City golden era hip hop. I will fight you. I will fuck you up. You could say what you want, but
93, 94. If you think about the albums that came out in 93, 94, you got Ready to Die, you got Illmatic, you got unbelievable Tribe Called Quest.
I mean, you had so good. Craig Mack gets lost in that.
Right, no,
LL Cool J was dropping albums. I mean, it was like
Wu-Tang Clan came out that same year.
Oh,
think about it. All of a sudden, you started some of the top 10 greatest albums came out in an 18-month period.
Yep.
And you're gonna say oh no, the best period is 98 or some nonsense. Stop.
Nah, stop. Quit playing. Them boys would have got chopped down, So anyway, so that is not like Cru.
Right, not like Cru. So what Ryan and I said was, listen, there's a few things that are absolute non-negotiable. One, we have to have glassware. We have to have Zalto glassware, which kind of. That was a big statement because there was no 4-star restaurant using Zalto exclusively.
Wow.
Even though Aldo Sum was the brand ambassador, Le Bernardin wasn't using them exclusively, etc. So the idea that a neighborhood restaurant would have Zalto. The other thing was we have to have refrigerated, temperature-controlled wine service, no matter what. We're only gonna play hip hop, and that was it. They were non-negotiables. Ryan's like, great. He was like, what are we fighting over? I'm like, we're not fighting over shit. I'm just telling you, when push comes to shove, and
if you don't know, now you know.
So he was great. And so, I used to, when we first opened, I would just play songs from my iPhone. Mm-hmm. And I would kind of fuck up I'd have because this is when you had all your music on your phone pre Spotify, everything you just had it on your phone.
I mean, I had it.
Your
I had
playlist,
a, what was it? I had a iPod.
Yeah,
that shit was thick. Now, and now your phone can hold more than your iPod.
But now you don't even have any music on your phone. It's all streaming.
Yeah.
And so I would play all that stuff, and I'd put together a playlist, and I'd just go ahead, and if it was too quiet or too loud, I could adjust it. But every once in a while, I'd be like, yo, we ran out of cranberry juice, and I'd have to go across the street to the deli to get some cranberry juice, and I forget the phone's in my pocket, and I come back, and there'd be no music in the house. And, we're bumping shit, and all of a sudden it goes perfectly quiet.
It's just I mean, back in the day, they were scratching the record.
And I did it all the time, and at some point, the bartender, a guy named Charlie, who's amazing, he has a company now called Audio Culture that does playlists for restaurants. He's like, yo, let me make a playlist for you guys. Maybe I can do that. And so he ended up, from that on, after maybe the first year, did our playlists, and I would talk to him. I'd be like, Charlie, you can't play this. You can't start. It can't be 6 o'clock and there'd be a bunch of gunshots. You know what I mean? Listen, I'm all for it, but you just can't the restaurant can't be half full with families and there would be a whole bunch of gunshots. You know what I mean? That's just not cool. So you gotta
oh, that's hilarious.
So yeah, only hip hop, only really. I tell you that old school hip hop is really what we did at Charlie Bird. We mixed it up at Pasquale Jones with more soul, R&B, and kind of steppier hip hop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Legacy was a little more contemporary, and so we had different kind of musical styles. But for me, Charlie Bird was a spot because you could drink a bottle of Bun Mar, eat a roast chicken, listen to hip hop, and wear a t-shirt and jeans.
That's not anything I'd ever seen.
And I thought to myself, if I want that,
right?
I want to be able to go out in a restaurant, drink incredibly well as be served wine correctly. Make sure that it's served at the right temperature, that it's decanted when it needs to, and not when it's not, and all the things that are about correct wine service. Eat simply but really tasty food, and be in a fun environment that looks good. And I'm like, why is that? Why is there that Venn diagram doesn't exist yet?
Right.
And we didn't know. We got beat up a little bit early on for playing hip hop and trying to surf it. Because again, not that many places were playing legit hip hop in 2013 at this kind of level.
Still playing Bust a Move.
You know what I mean? And so we got beat up. People were like, I came to this restaurant thinking you'd be playing jazz. I'd be like, Why?
Oh, it's Charlie Bird.
Charlie Bird. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. What are you, like, no. And then we kind of got beat up for it a little bit, but it didn't matter.
That raises a question that I had asked James J. Moles, like concert, like he saw Rakim in concert. What's like the best? I know. I was like, what? You talking about Rakim? Like, what's the best hip hop show you've seen?
I mean, probably the most formative. I saw Public Enemy play Roseland in 1991.
That's a good one.
And they had Anthrax come on and do that. Like,
yeah.
But I have to say, maybe the best shit I saw was Jay and Nas together. That was pretty special. The two of them, post beef, they're friends and really like working together. You know, and that was some of the best shit they did. Jay did a concert at Webster Hall, B-Sides, like 2 years ago, year and change ago, maybe it was even 2 years ago. And the two of them, Nas came on, and it was a total surprise. Everyone just like lost their shit, and especially in a venue like Webster Hall where it's like really small and intimate.
Well, I saw Lenny Kravitz here. That's crazy. Oh. That's a great place to see like badass acts, right? Like saw Lenny there a couple years ago, and it's like
it's great.
It's great, you know, to see like people can fill stadiums.
Yeah, playing
in
small
an
venues.
Intimate venue.
Yeah,
and you know, Lenny's from New York. Those guys from New York. Yeah. So the crowd is just
extra hyped.
Right, exactly.
Like that's the difference when you go to like. I don't see hip hop shows in New York anymore because you go to MSG or you go to Barclays and you're going to like this Jay show and you're 5 rows from the front and you're around the Fortune 500.
Oh, totally.
And no one has ever. If you said rank the top 5 Jay albums, they'd be like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Reasonable Doubt's not even in there.
Exactly.
They haven't even heard of Reasonable
I'm an American Express member. I get tickets. I get first crack at tickets, or my office got tickets and shit.
And so as a result, it becomes like a country club event, and none of the people are getting what's coming off the stage. Right. And as a result, the artist doesn't feel the energy coming back to them. And so it's always shitty. But we fly to Cleveland. We flew to Detroit. We've seen a bunch of we went to Atlantic City. One of the best Jay shows I've ever seen was in fucking Atlantic City because it was fucking raw. Everyone there was like, they were like out for fucking blood to get close to the stage. It was great. And people were dressed out. Like it was an event. Right. It was awesome. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. So anyway, that's what's cool about again, a lot of these, I mean, that's the best thing about wine for me is that you get introduced to people.
Hey, did you ever come to your restaurant? Because I know he's a pretty big wine drinker.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And especially Pasquale Jones. Yeah. But now that he lives in LA, we don't see him as much. But I'm not talking out of school. There's a lot of media and shit about him coming to our restaurant. So I'm not.
Oh, okay.
You know,
no.
I don't drop dimes on people who come to the restaurant. Keep it like low key. But there's a lot of paparazzi outside the restaurant when those guys are there.
I know. I can imagine, man. Yeah, no. But it just seemed like a place like, you know, he's going to be in the know. And he's like, yo, this place down in Soho, and, you know, they playing hip hop, you know.
Oh, yeah. No, that's good.
You know?
That's good.
So that's dope, you know, that he came.
And you get to meet all these people who are the best at what they do, and no matter what it is, they can be basketball players, they can be musicians, they can be hedge fund managers that are just like of a next level way of thinking. And
exactly.
And they want to talk to you, and you're like, really? Okay, I'll talk to you about wine.
Right, and that's what's cool, like, at that level. Like you said, you're dealing with the best in the world. Like, when I worked down in Montecito, you know, there's a polo club. And so, like...
Of course there is in Montecito.
You know, so, like, you know, I Tommy Lee Jones came in. Right. He played polo. And he came into the wine store. He's like, young man, how's this bottle of wine? It's like a 69 Mondavi. I'm like, it's an iconic wine.
Yeah, right.
All right, I'll take it. You know what I mean? And even just working at Acker, just on by all the people coming to Dakota, like... And I heard you say something like, the thing is they really love is when you just treat them like a regular person.
Oh, dude,
and they geek out because they're like... You're like, if you're in that restaurant, that place, like, well, this person knows wine. So, like you said, it's recognized game, and they love it, you know, and it's a really cool thing. And you just treat them like regular people. I mean, people, like... Yeah,
you got to treat them like regular people because they want to be treated like a regular person.
Because they kind of are. They're just really good at what they do, right? You know what I mean?
And I've said this, you know, and it's kind of an arrogant thing to say to someone, but I'm like, I'm as good at what I do as you are what you do. And so, like, I'm not here to, like... I'm not looking at your shoes. Like, I'm gonna look at you in your eye because, like, we're.
Right.
I'm not ashamed of what I do.
Exactly.
You make a lot more money than me. You have a lot nicer shit than me, but I'm good at what I do.
Right.
And I'm not embarrassed
Right.
that I chose this path that doesn't remunerate me, that society doesn't think that hospitality professionals should make as much as people in banking. And I'm not saying that those people are wrong.
No, I know exactly what you're saying.
They're not bad people for making a lot of money,
no.
but I'm not less worthy because
Right.
I don't make as much money.
Right.
And
right.
so I just don't, I'm not ashamed.
And that's also, I think, a Jersey thing growing up.
Yeah,
Like,
fuck that
I was
shit.
like, just like, are you fucking kidding me? Who the fuck do you think you're talking to?
You better fucking recognize.
Exactly. That's really cool, man. I mean, that's exciting. So you're doing that thing, and you got incredible concept, and it's on and popping, and then you go, you know what, I need a new challenge.
No, I didn't. Not at all. You're talking about Pasquale Jones?
Yeah.
Pasquale Jones was, I have to say, Pasquale Jones was an easy next step for us because, again, Ryan and I see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. We kept saying, like, let's have a place where we can eat a great roast chicken and drink a bottle of Burgundy.
That's
simple.
it.
That's it.
That's it. I
that's
saw an episode. Somebody feed Phil, and he was in Paris somewhere, and there's this restaurant where they have this wood burning oven, and it takes only like 40 minutes, and it's just all they put on is duck fat, and then they give you like the crazy, what are those crazy whipped potatoes that are twice baked? What you know, yeah, and then they also give you frites. And then I was like, I would just.
You're talking about Louis.
Yeah, I was like, we got it tomorrow. We got to go there and just gotta have a fucking great bottle of wine. That's it.
That's it. That's all you need.
Bottle of Burgundy and
chicken, and you're good.
And you're good to go.
So that was that concept, or the kind of raison d'etre.
So good.
Charlie.
That is so good.
And then Pasquale Jones is like, we kept saying to ourselves, I want to eat a great pizza, drink a great bottle of wine, out of nice glassware served by people who know what they're doing, and listen to good music. Why can't I do that? Because everything was a compromise. You could eat a great pizza, but it was going to be in kind of a dingy, shitty place. You had to drive like an hour into Brooklyn for it.
Let's pause here on pizza though, because so you're from Jersey.
Yep.
You've lived in New York. Better pizza, New York or New Jersey?
It's tough, right? Because the pizza thing in New York is much more about sitting down and having a whole pie.
Yeah.
You exclude Joe's or maybe Prince Street, or like the slice game isn't really tight in New York.
No, you wouldn't. If you were trying to tell somebody about New York pizza, you wouldn't take them to Sbarro's. You wouldn't take like someone who was like a vice president candidate.
Don't get angry
from Alaska, and then take them to Sbarro's.
We're having a peaceful fucking conversation.
Know, right?
You know what I mean? Like why fighting words and shit. Yeah. But I think the Jersey slice game is tight. You know what I mean? Like I think you can, like even like on the boardwalk in Jersey Shore.
Dude, I remember it as a mall. You go to Luca's, it was 75 cents. Fucking thin, crisp.
Tight, the whole game.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying.
But like Joe's downtown is like got that vibe, and granted, I've eaten more of that because I'm drunk at 2 a.m. You know, that's the place I eat. But there's not a lot of good slice situation. But the pizza thing, especially now, people are coming correct.
Okay, so then I'm gonna throw the curveball at you. You had pie in Connecticut. You had New Haven pizza.
All right. This is tough for me to say because I respect my elders, and all that Pepe's. They've been around for a long time. I went to Pepe's. And, Pasquale Jones was kind of famous for a clam pie, right? So my partner and I, Grant, would go up there. We're doing some work at some client's house. And we're like, let's stop in New Haven. Let's eat some clam pie. And it's a fucking rigmarole. Like, it's a thing. Like, it's kind of a headache. There's like a line out the door.
You gotta know someone, bro.
You know what I mean? Then you go, you sit down, and they like, you're at a table number, and you're like, now you're identified. I'm at table 24. Now I'm 24, right? Like they give you a plastic covered menu that's like crinkly and all jacked. And it's got like all this souvenir shit that you're supposed to, all tchotchkes and shit you're supposed to buy. And then like some like hag comes over like, what do you want? And you're like, seriously? The fuck? Like, can't we have a little bit of an experience? Can we have like a little bit of
You're getting a New Haven experience, bro.
And so they served us, we ordered 3 pizzas because we're like, fuck this.
Yeah.
And they all sucked.
Wow.
And I have to say, I threw it out there. I put it on Instagram because Pepe's throws it out there like best pizza, best.
They do win every year,
or some bullshit like that. Right. So I was like, I had to like take a picture of that fucked up pizza with that sign, and I just throw that out there. And I kind of got, I got dragged a little bit, but for the most part, people were like, good for you. Stand like.
Now my wife's from New Haven. So she's gonna be like.
She thinks the emperor has clothes on.
No,
right?
but Modern, not Pepe's. Modern pizza, modern or beats. That's the
Okay.
one.
All right. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe when things clears up, you were born in Rhode Island. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll take a trip up to Newport.
Listen, I want New
You
Haven to
know?
have good pizza. Like, you can't
Personally,
just-
I mean, I need to find a good place in New York. Like I said, I think Jersey, the slice game is so good. There's a little piece. There's a place like where I grew up. There was one block. It was a mafia block because the only way you could have 3 fucking Italian restaurants. Literally, one was on this corner. You had Tony's, you had Tuzio's, and you had Nunzio's. They were literally across. One were across the street, and one was right next to each other. There's the only way you could do that because this crew goes here, this crew goes here, this crew goes there. But Nunzio's was.
Did you bring a vest?
You know. But yeah. So okay. So I was just curious.
That's a fair question.
Yeah, man.
It's kind of like the bagel question.
Oh fuck! Come on, man. I don't know. I just know when it comes to bagels and pizza. I mean, because I lived in California for 10 years. Like it's the water, bro.
Yeah.
It's the water.
Yeah, you were having Wonder Bread for a while.
Oh my God, so bad, so bad. The best pizza was Trader Joe's frozen Neapolitan pizza. Literally, and I doctored up myself. That was the best pizza.
But
in
SF's
California.
got some good pizza. I have to say.
Yeah.
There's some
Well, I
good
was
pizza at
down
SF.
in Santa Barbara. Yeah, SF is so international,
Different,
man. But so you guys do that. You want a pizza and you want a nice glass of Barbera out of a very nice glass.
These are simple requests. We're simple people.
I'm all about the simplicity. Like don't make it too fancy. Like like some of the best meals are like 5 ingredients, man, and just a great wine and great service. So then how'd you end up starting Grand Cru?
So Grand Cru started. This is like, again, it's a little bit by chance in a way. We started. It was a spinoff of an import company that Roy had invested in. The other partner, we didn't end up seeing eye to eye, and we kind of like just spun it off and kept the fine wine part of it. And so we ended up just working with. So Ned Benedict, who really was the founding partner of that really ran it. Was really close with Becky Wasserman from the Sorbet in Burgundy, and they've been friends forever. And we started with 2 of her growers in Burgundy, Domaine des Croix. It was a young guy named David Croix who had just started his own domain, and Domaine du Comte Liege Belair. This was before Louis Michel was like king of the world. He was still like figuring all this stuff out, right? And
that was one of Dustin's. He's like one of his greatest moments was like they tasted like back to 18 something.
Yeah. From
the domain.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that shit's crazy.
That was a good day.
You were there too. See, balling.
Well, we're his importer. We've been buying his wine since day one. So we started that. 2009 really started. Ned and I worked together at Zacky's, and we would like take the train home, and we'd end up going to Washington Park where Roy was, and we'd just end up just drinking a bunch of wine together. And we end up starting this company because we kept getting asked by growers like, "Hey, we're having trouble with our distribution in New York. Who do you recommend?" And we'd recommend someone, and we kept figuring out like we kept getting these same questions. We had these great relationships. We kind of knew what they needed, because realistically, being an importer is really just being an advocate, a kind of an ambassador for the grower, right? You're trying to figure out the best ambassador for a grower's wine is them, but they have jobs to do, and they don't live in New York. And so you try to spend as much time with them, listen, and try to articulate their passion and purpose to a buyer, right? And if you spend enough time with these people, you know the stories, you know the little shorthand. A lot of it's storytelling, a lot of it's about philosophy, about point of view, about perspective, and we felt like over the years we'd spent a lot of time with a bunch of these growers, and we felt like we could tell that story on their behalf. And so we thought, why not us? Why do we keep outsourcing this to all these other people who maybe aren't doing as good a job as we could? And so we started really small, and we were working out of Roy's office on 57th Street, and over time, a lot of these winemakers who remembered, Ned from Zacky's, or when he was working at Boulay or at Oriole, or me from Cru, would call and be like, "Hey, you guys, I heard you guys started a business. Are you taking new people?" And so all of a sudden we'd have like a couple producers from California, we had a couple producers from Friuli, and then we added to our Burgundy thing, and then we bought this. My friend Liz, who I was telling you earlier, who helped me out with the whole Jordan situation, had her own company, so we brought her in. She brought Chav with that and some little experience.
Baller, bro.
And all of a sudden we started, then we bought these vineyards in Burgundy, and then all of a sudden we had some Rouleau and Lafont in our portfolio, and all of a sudden we're like, wow, we're like a real fucking company. You know, we had to hire people and we had to like figure it out. And we kind of bootstrapped that situation for a number of years. I was working, you know, as like a consultant, for lack of a better word, between the restaurants and the import business because of this SLA bullshit, but it's not even worth getting down that rabbit hole because it's so antiquated. Nobody with any fucking common sense would understand what I'm talking about, so I'm just going to let it go.
All I can say is fucking, I'm 21. I should be able to get wine wherever I live from whoever I want.
Yeah, but that's not how it goes.
I know.
So I don't get like,
I know.
This is a separate 7-hour conversation only for like really current log rads. It's so Byzantine. Anyway, so I'm working during the day with Ned at Grand Cru and doing private client shit and doing vineyard work stuff. And then at night I work at the restaurants. And that was going really, really well. And so that's how we kept building that business where Ned ran the sales and kind of ran the team, and I would help with supplier relations. I speak a little French, so we spent a lot of time in France. And we just kept growing the business. Like just actually, for whatever reason, it kept doing better every year, and it was going well, and we're doing really well. Then the restaurants kept opening new restaurants. We had all these like, we were supposed to open like a Pasquale Jones in Singapore and in Las Vegas and all this crazy shit. Like we were supposed to open this hotel in Midtown and all this stuff. And then July of 2019, Ned, we're at our best fucking place. We just celebrated his 60th birthday in Spain, and he goes to Mallorca and he falls off a ledge and dies tragically, suddenly, for no reason.
Jeez, I remember reading about that.
Oh, it was crazy.
That's devastating, man.
No, it's devastating. No, I mean, hard, because it was so just senseless. Like any one of 3 or 4 steps that could have been taken very easily, any one of them could have averted that tragedy. And something as stupid as like, he didn't have his glasses on, he didn't have his phone on, he was running late to pick up his all these things that could like very easily could have like gone the other way, he would still be here. And so because of that, I had a really hard decision to make. I had to decide, do we sell the company? Do we try to find someone to run it while I kind of, again, straddle both worlds? Do I leave the restaurants and run Grand Cru full time? Because like you can't consult even for restaurants and be on a liquor license for an import business. So I ended up taking like 2 months of like processing all the shit that goes with that kind of event, and kind of coming to this realization that was really evident from day one, but it took me a long time to get there. Of like, there's only one choice, and that choice is to divest of any interest in the restaurants or any time with them, and work at Grand Cru full time, run Grand Cru full time, and not try to replace Ned, because there's no way you can do that, but you try to like make it your own in a way. Yeah. And so that's what I do now. On a daily basis, I work just really one full-time job.
Yeah, normally I ask people a question like, was there ever a time where you questioned what you were doing in the business? That would seem like a time where you would.
Yeah, I question it still every
day.
Shut
to pause. That's what Andre said every fucking day, man.
You know, because like Andre, I'm a hospitality professional. Like that's my job. That's what I do. Like that's the muscle I've built over 30 years. And you know that expression when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail?
Yep.
I'm a hammer, and I feel like every problem is solved through a hospitality way of thinking, and that's the
you know what
case.
They say, man. You get more flies with honey than vinegar, and that's hospitality.
Yeah, that is a lot of it, right?
You know, it's a part of it. But
it's a part of it, and so I do think that like the team building and team leadership and all that comes through, and relationships is all about how you put yourself out there and make yourself available, and you're genuine, and authenticity is really transparent. That works for a lot of the parts of the business, but then there's a real merchant part of the business where it's just straight trading dollars.
Yep.
And that's less about hospitality.
Right.
And that's the thing that I'm still learning.
Yeah. So how have you been affected since the outbreak? Because I would think a lot of your wines were probably restaurant only at some point. So how have you been able to weather the storm? And
It's been tough, right? It's been we've had you know, the word pivot's overused, but we really had to change direction, change course in a way. We had a good small contingent of very knowledgeable, experienced, high-end wine shops. Not like a lot of retail, but like 20 really good core people who believed in our mission in a way, right?
Right.
And then we sold like 60% of our wine to restaurants. So that's when 60% goes to zero,
right?
And you have a couple $1 million of inventory, you got to figure out what to do. And so that's what we've been doing. But you know, that coupled with the senseless tariff game that the Trump administration placed on.
Fucking God. We had Mary Taylor on too, and she just went because she testified. She just.
Oh, dude, it's fucking crazy. There's no reason. It's like it's so punitive for. You think that Jeremy Sess has a direct line to Macron to say, hey, you know what, I think that the Airbus subsidies that you guys have are really misplaced and it's really affecting our business. Right. And as a constituent of yours, I think you should change course. Get the fuck out of here. Like, there's no way a grower, any of these people have the swag to move French foreign policy for Airbus.
The way Americans do.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a different thing. But more than that, it's an industry like Airbus is tens and tens of billions of dollars greater than any one industry, and every one of them they're all diffuse, right? There's no one winemakers union that they're all going to rally through to get these things turned over. So Airbus is paying a 10% tariff for being the chief culprit of this WTO claim, and the winemakers have 25% tariff, and that all goes through to consumers. And of course, Trump thinks that the wineries that France is paying the fucking tariff, but in fact, it's you and me.
At
the end of the day,
totally. And you know, I mean, it's. And I would hear stupid asses say like, well, if you're drinking American wine, every fucking winemaker I know in California is like, this is bad for business, man.
It's terrible for because there's a wine ecosystem. This is the thing that no one understands outside of our industry. You're like, oh well. If we change the way wines are imported, or if we have more strict regulations about how you should sell older vintage wines, you know, there's like these primary source laws and all these things, then we can keep buyers from only buying from the source they're supposed to. No, they're not. They're just going to do it. They're going to do whatever they have to do to get old wine for their purposes, because people who have money aren't drinking 2018 Grand Cru wines. They're not. They're drinking 1990s and 1985s and blah, blah, blah. So the idea that it is a completely connected ecosystem, and if Grand Cru Selections goes under because of wine tariffs, the dozen Oregon and California wine producers we have don't have distribution to the hundreds and hundreds of restaurants that we sell to. And what does that do for them? It's so nearsighted. I mean, it's like it's as dumb a foreign policy and economic policy as you would expect from a guy like Donald Trump. It's as stupid.
I mean, it's one of those things where people talk about this shit all the time, like, oh, politicians. No, you need a politician to be a politician. It's a job. It's a skill set. You don't want somebody, you can't just walk off the street and say, I want to play basketball, play NBA basketball. Like, everything has levels, bro.
Would you get on an airplane and be like, hey, this is my first time flying an airplane, but I'm really passionate about flying?
Have you seen that? It was going around where they were like in the hospital. It's like, we can have this doctor do it or this clown. And the clown's like, he's like, no, he's literally a clown. It's like, yeah, but is he funny? And it was obviously a spoof on our current political situation.
How many Twitter followers does that clown have? Like, that's what we're talking
about.
That's
exactly. Like, literally, used to say all the time, it's a popularity contest, and
no, it's not.
It's like this is the thing. Reality TV, people get desensitized, etc., and so on. Right? But yeah, I mean, like, that's got to be. And I've seen some of your posts, like you said, you're very fucking vocal about it, as you would be. You know, like, don't
not
fuck
as bad
with,
as my wife. My wife, don't fuck with her. She's angry. She hates Donald Trump. She didn't give a fuck about politics in 2016. That girl is wound up. And good for her. Like, by the way, that's the only positive that came out of Donald Trump is it motivated a generation of apathetic. Mostly millennial and older, in fact, Americans, just apathetic Americans who didn't really think that politics affected them on a daily basis. Now they know.
Wait, why is my Dublin or cheddar cheese cost $2 more? All that shit.
Exactly.
How come brie went through the roof? Yeah. Oh.
That's why 155 million people voted this year.
Yeah.
It wasn't a coincidence.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, you've weathered. I mean, a great story, but in it all, I could hear there's a lot of adversity. You've weathered some serious storms, man. Like, what's the plan? What's the plan for the next 5 years or so?
I don't know. That's a question that people don't believe me, that I just don't like. My whole life has been like, I'm just gonna do the thing, and when there's a choice to go left or right, I'm gonna figure out at that moment.
Right.
But I don't really have a grand plan
Yeah.
at this point. Much to my wife's chagrin, because I just kind of.
Well, you loving your life right now? Like with your wife and your kids?
Oh, dude, it's so good. And that's I have to say the pandemic was really hard, mostly for work reasons and uncertainty, and whether we'd be able to grow our business, whether we'd keep our staff, and whether all these things, and also the survivor's guilt you have of having a job when you have thousands of friends in the hospitality industry that are out of work, or that are seesawing or up and down. They get a job and they get furloughed, and they get another job, they get furloughed. It's just crazy. But the best thing is I spent more time with our family. I cooked like lunch and dinner every day for months. It was great. We had a blast. Henry had a half hour of school a day. It was like, this is a joke. It was like, you know what I mean? It was like, whatever. I'm like, it was so much fun. Then we'd be like, he's like, let's get some ice cream. I'm like, let's get some ice cream. We bought a boat for some reason. And I've never driven a boat before, but I bought a boat this summer. And I'd be like, sure, let's go to Greenport. We'd take an hour boat ride to go get ice cream, because what the fuck else were we going to do?
Nice.
You know what I mean? It was great. We had a blast.
Yeah.
I spent so much time. And Jordan, she's a hustler. She works a lot. And especially the summer is a big thing for Ramona. It's like a really busy time.
Yep.
And she's got 100 side hustles too. She's got a podcast.
Yep.
She's writing a book. She's got
another book.
You know, she's like got 7 things going on. And she's also very good at follow up. When she meets someone, she like writes them.
Yep.
She's very thoughtful. So she's got she fills up her plate, and I'd be like, all right, well, Henry and I are gonna get some ice cream. You know what I mean? I'm like, I know you got like 100 hours of work to do, but we're gonna get some ice cream.
Yeah, we're gonna get some ice cream.
You know what I mean? And listen, that's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons we're so drawn to each other. But you know, she's motivated. She's hungry. She's still after seeing some success, she's still like, she's the one you should ask what's next, because she's got 7 answers for you. I'm just like, I don't know. I'd like to ski some more. Like that. That's what I'd like to. Like that's my goal. Like maybe skiing a little bit more. Maybe, I don't know.
I love it. So man, we talk about all this stuff, man. All these wines. Like, what's like your most memorable wine experience, man?
Wow.
Silence. I asked the tough questions.
No,
Did you order the code red?
You know, the thing about wine isn't the most memorable moment isn't the quality or the rarity or the cost of the wine that you drank. It's obviously the setting. And so there are so many moments where I look across the table at friends and family, and mostly my wife, where we're drinking some great bottle of wine, but we're in this incredible setting, and we're just we're really like just blessed to be where we are at that moment. I wouldn't say there's any one to distill it to one thing. It's for the reason that we're not drinking a Grand Cru Selection wine, right? Because to try to choose favorites amongst a whole bunch of things that you really care about is really not super fair to anybody, and that game of like, what's the wine of the night is a game I don't play either, because it's like, hey, we drank 12 unbelievable bottles of wine, but this one wine, it's just not fair. So I'm going to respectfully decline that answer, because it's not that I have actually had an abundance of opportunities, but it's mostly because there are so many singular moments that I can think of that are so important and meaningful to me that have wine involved in them.
He's trying to bullshit me from Jersey. He's just had so much fucking great wine.
I've had some fucking crazy wine. No.
120,000 bottles. 120,000.
No, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed.
I love that about you. You are so humble, man.
I'm embarrassed to say how much wine I've had. That's been fucking crazy.
But like you could say, come on, bro. I'm from you. Be like, dude, I just had so much good shit.
No, it's
You
crazy.
know, and
No,
I
it's,
love
it's not
I
fair.
love people, and I, you know, like it could be, you know, I get it, man, but like,
No, there's not going to be a bottle. I'm like, oh yeah, the Magnum of 29 Romani Conti I had at DRC happened to be really great. Yeah, of course it happened to be really great. But
yeah, of
it's
course it had to
not
be really
like,
good,
but you know what? When Jean-Louis Chave opens a bottle of 1921 Hermitage Blanc, 1929 Hermitage Blanc,
Blanc,
and you're like, wow.
what?
And then he opens that same wine, but Vin de Paille 5 years later, and he's like, "Do you remember the white?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I fucking remember the white we had. This is the Vin de Paille." And you're having that conversation. That's really special. I drink it with his dad
Yeah.
at a ceremony that they're talking about how important Hermitage is to the French culture. Yeah, that's a great moment. Like I can't say that that's not an amazing moment. That's great, but my wife wasn't there, right? And so
Yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? And I'm not, or
Good answer.
so
And
I don't
it's
know.
genuine, but it's a great answer, dude.
It's hard because like there's so many of those incredible moments where listen, the wines that these guys brought from our bachelor party in Aspen in 2008,
Sounds sick.
fucking bananas,
Yeah.
right? And like every one of those things, each one of those, these guys brought a bottle of wine, a Magnum, because we were 10 people. They were all really, they thought about what's the wine that I would really want to drink from their collection,
Right.
and that's powerful. That's the beauty of wine. I mean, it sounds so corny, but the whole fucking game is finding people who share that thing, that passion, that generosity of spirit, which is one of the great things you can have. Empathy, generosity of spirit, and selflessness is like they're all wrapped up. And when you can surround yourselves and you can self-select those people, you have unlimited number of opportunities and experiences because you've decided that you're going to surround yourself with like-minded people. And that's to then choose which one of those is best of all of them is kind of unfair.
Well, man, I got to tell you, I want to thank you for your generosity of spirit. I want to thank you for providing me with yet another singular wine experience, bringing a bottle of wine that I will never have again and would never had, but for you being here. And just thank you for you just I have a good sense. You're a good person. Like I have a good sense, but I like you're just a really intelligent, caring, loving, kind, kick-ass kind of Jersey boy like myself. So it's been a real pleasure having you here, Robert. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And tell people where they can find you, man, or how they can be a part of what you're doing, man. You know, I know you're kind of a below the radar
Yeah, I'd like
kind
to
of
keep
guy.
it below the radar.
So yeah. So he owns Grand Cru Selections. Go buy. He didn't pimp his own wine. He didn't bring it here. So go buy. Next time you're in a store, turn it around, see if it says Grand Cru Selections on it, right?
Yeah, that's
that's what you can do for Robert. So, hey guys, it's MJ. Until next time, here's to the Mavericks, the philosophers, the deep thinkers, and of course all you wine drinkers. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.
You two are fun.
Yeah,
Come on,
we had to end on that because you brought it around beautifully, bro.
Oh,
Cheers.
thanks.
Thank
Cheers.
You.
This is great.
Absolutely
Delicious.
Stunning.
Tasty.
Yeah,
I mean,
stunning.
it's like the color
Cheers.
and now the fruits popping through, but it was good all around.